I know what you're thinking. Did he take 6 shots of whiskey or only 5? Now, to tell you the truth, I've forgotten myself in all this excitement. But being this is Afterthoughts, the most powerful podcast in the world and will blow your ears clean off, you've got to ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk? This is a very abrasive cold open to start the podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome to Afterthoughts, a podcast where we break down a movie that we each watched this past week. I am your host, Michael Dixon. With me, as always, Ryan King.
I have rights to a lawyer. I have rights to a lawyer.
No, you shut up, you son of a bitch.
I have rights
You don't
to a
have
lawyer.
any rights.
You get, go take a hike, fatso. Oh, wait, who am I talking to?
If you keep complaining, I'm just going to jam my foot into your leg. And that is John Garcia. What's going on?
Hey, Dixon, that's a fan-fucking-tastic Dirty Harry impression you got there. I
Thank you.
Yeah. I think they could cast you for the prequel to Gran Torino. Oh, wait, that's this fucking movie. Okay.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that.
Can you do cameos?
Yeah.
Just
Oh, that would be
deep fake
pretty
Eastwood
funny.
on your face. It'll be fine.
Eastwood and Trump, that's what I got.
That could
Anyway.
be Dirty Harry at a political rally.
Oh, there you go. Clint Eastwood interrogating an empty chair.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The chair has the rights to the lawyer. Oh, man.
President Chair, why did you bungle Obamacare? Anyway, if you can't tell, tonight we are talking about 1971's Dirty Harry.
This is a movie about a couple of killers, Harry Callahan and a homicidal maniac. The one with the badge is Harry.
Send Inspector Callahan in. What have you been doing?
Oh, well, for the past 3/4 of an hour, I've been sitting on my ass in your outer office, waiting on you.
Damn it all, Harry, that's the mayor you're talking to.
This is no life for you two.
Why do you stay in it then?
I don't know.
There were a lot of reasons they called him Dirty Harry. And he kept inventing new ones. You don't assign him
Stop!
to murder cases. You just turn him loose.
Contrary to popular belief, the grittiest films in the Batman franchise were not made by Christopher Nolan. They were made by Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood. In Dirty Harry, Eastwood stars as the titular Harry Callahan, a rogue cop who plays by his own rules and completely disregards the civil rights of his suspects and the safety of the general population. He's hot on the tail of a batshit crazy serial killer, and he'll stop at nothing to bring him to justice. So Dirty Harry, this is a movie that I really enjoyed in college. I got on like a huge Clint Eastwood kick. My friend Sam, who has guested before, bought me the Man with No Name trilogy on DVD when I was a freshman in college, and ended up watching those and being like, holy shit, what is this? Like, Clint Eastwood's fucking awesome. And I started like watching as many of his movies as I could. And this is one that I really loved at the time, and I watched it, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times over the course of college and maybe the year or two after that. Haven't revisited it since then, and since that time, my politics have changed wildly. I am very much not a fan of cops, and I was like, this would be really interesting to go back and revisit this movie and see if it's still as good as I remember it. Turns out this movie fucking rocks still today. Its politics are abhorrent. Just absolute fascism, pro-cop propaganda that is pretty fucking wild. But I couldn't deny, like, I loved this movie. I was just on its wavelength the entire time. This came out in 1971. It feels like it came out in the mid to late 70s. Like, you can really see the influence this had on 70s films moving forward. Oftentimes when you think about like the quintessential films of a decade, those are coming in the mid to late part of a decade as the, style has kind of changed from the previous decade. In the 70s, you think about like, Taxi Driver and like Death Wish and, these movies that came around in the mid to late part of the decade that were, cop movies or crime movies that, kind of established the style in the genre of the era, and you really feel the influence that Dirty Harry had on those movies. Like San Francisco filmed at night feels like in New York City at night in Taxi Driver, the way that they do that. Um, it's the cinematography is just beautiful. Like it's hard to like point to a certain style that it has. It's just it always chooses really interesting angles for every scene of the film. There's some really cool close-ups and tracking shots. The helicopter shot where they have a close-up on the serial killer and then pull all the way out to like above the fucking football stadium is so cool. I don't even know if I've really ever seen another shot like that. It's just such like a daring, cool thing to do. It has this jazzy driving score that's really unsettling and really pushes you through the film and kind of keeps you engaged and on the edge of your seat the entire time. Um, it's just like the score really helps where there are these long stretches without any dialogue, and that helps to really build the kind of the vibe of the movie and help you to get a feel for San Francisco. There's a lot of just scenes of them traveling around the city or kind of setting up what is going on, showing you the serial killer looking around from a rooftop, plotting what he's going to do. I don't think there's even any dialogue for the first like 5-6 minutes of the movie, but it's just so engrossing. The movie does a lot of showing rather than telling, where it's showing you what's happening. You watch Harry go around and do police work without him having to spoon feed you and tell you what's happening. And Eastwood is so great for that. He's so good in this movie, and he's such a nonverbal actor where he can convey so much with a sarcastic look or just a grimace, and exactly what he's thinking and going through. But the movie also has a really great punchy script that has a lot of fun dialogue for him to say, wisecracking at his superiors and things like that are a lot of fun. So I really loved this movie. It just kind of set the tone for cop movies, like the rogue cop who hates paperwork and what his bosses want him to do, and he doesn't play by the rules. And like so many movies have ripped this off horribly. And you see it done correctly in Dirty Harry, and like I disagree with a lot of things that the film is saying, but I was like, I can't deny that like this thing fucking rules. It's great. So yeah, John, what do you think?
Yeah. So this is my first time watching Dirty Harry. I've been really slacking trying to catch up on my Clint Eastwood. I just saw, Fistful of Dollars.
For shame.
About a year and a half ago. Before that, the only Clint Eastwood movies I'd seen are anything after Gran Torino, which, as we all know, isn't as good as anything before Gran Torino.
Those are his worst movies. You gotta go back to the 60s and 70s to get that real uncut Eastwood.
Yeah, and this one, I had the Blade Runner problem for me with this, just because when I watched it, everything that I'd seen in it, I'd already seen in every other movie. And you know me, I love 2004's The Punisher, that basically is this fucking movie with Marvel coding on it and a lot of other cheesy bullshit to it. I don't think that Dirty Harry would ever pull a fake fire hydrant out to give somebody a parking ticket in a grand scheme to frame them.
Beat the shit out
Yeah, he
of
would just
them.
beat the shit out of them. Exactly. But I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed seeing John Vernon again as he was chastising somebody. It's really great just to hear him give somebody the fucking works, like in this clip here.
You sick, Vince?
Yeah, man, he's got the clap.
It's burning up. Go fuck an iceberg.
Oh, no, wait, that's the wrong fucking clip. That's from Savage Streets. It's this clip.
You bought it this time, Buster. I'm calling your national office. I'm going to revoke your charter.
Oh, no, that's from Animal House. It's this one.
I don't want any more trouble like you had last year in the Fillmore district.
That's the one. There we go. Yeah, him trying to give Harry some kind of like reprimanding of, don't go do this shit in the streets. And of course, Harry's a badass. So he's
like, how do you establish intent? And Harry's like, when a naked man is chasing a woman through an alley with a butcher knife and a heart on, I figure he's out collecting for the Red Cross.
And John Vernon can't help but agree. It's just like,
I think he's got a point.
and he's the fucking mayor too. Like, I was just like, I did not expect
a mayor with a golden telephone. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Also, he's introduced in the credits as John Vernon, the mayor, and like in quotes, he's like a wrestler.
That John Vernon, the one that's the mayor.
Of
Gotcha,
course,
yeah.
I know. We all know the mayor of San Francisco. Whenever Dirty Harry wasn't slick talking and really giving some shit to some punks, which I don't like politically agree with.
Those are the
on
two
same
ways he
point.
solves every problem: is wisecracking or beating the shit out of people or like firing guns into crowds. Just
Yeah, like
violence or shit talk. That's
it's
it.
kind of amazing because he talks about his wife dying and he's just like, yeah, she was killed. It was a drunk driver. And I'm like, I thought it would be something way worse. Like, don't get me wrong, drunk driving's awful, but I thought it would be like a Death Wish scenario where
Yeah,
a bunch of punks rolled up on her and did some shit. And he was just like, I held it against punks ever since then.
A bunch of young black kids came and stabbed her in the back.
Ever
Been on
since
a mission
then,
to clean up these streets ever since.
I've been harboring a prejudice against kids specifically. But yeah, just so many things that his character does that I don't agree with fundamentally.
Yeah, he's
and
pretty racist.
he only seems to make things worse in so many ways, and he gets it right at the end, but just because he's so tenacious about getting it wrong. But yeah, anytime that he's not in the middle of a cool firefight, which, you know, the cinematography really leans into these nice night stylistic firefights. I fucking love the shootout that they have underneath the Jesus Saves sign.
Yeah.
Those kind of things that it's like,
Yeah.
the style is so cool. The angles of the shots and like, yeah, Dixon, to your point, the helicopter shot lifting out of the football stadium was just fucking rad. That was awesome. And then to have the score come in anytime that that's not happening, the score really carries you. It's almost like at certain points it was it is that it was used at certain points to create this ebb and flow of tension where the tension would break and we'd get into like a bongo drum situation. And we're like running up some stairs and you're following the beat and the
It's
rhythm
a lot
of
of
the
really
music.
driving drums that you're like,
Yeah.
oh fuck, what's going to happen?
and then like Harry would just get somewhere and it was suddenly like all Foley. That whole fucking sound would just carry these gunfights and these him hopping around and doing all this other shit. But yeah, I fucking loved it. I had a great time with it. Yeah, my one thing in like giving it any rating of stars was that I was like, I can't give it 5 stars. I don't even know that I can give it above 4 just because he did so much shit that was wrong. I couldn't agree with.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I was like, but at what cost? I mean, I get it, but Jesus. So yeah, that's my take on it. Ryan?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of like, is he the only cop in San Francisco? Because he falls into multiple things. And then I like that
He's got partners
he
that constantly get injured.
Right, yeah, all of his partners are out. And he takes the first bag delivery and completely fucks that up, right? And he gets chewed out for that. And then the second time they have a ransom, they're like, hey, Dirty Harry, you want to take it? I'm like, why? Is there no one else that can that can take a bag to a guy?
Any dirty job that comes along.
Yeah, apparently, I guess.
I love everybody free associating about why he's called Dirty Harry.
Yeah, that running
Yeah,
gag
that
is
was-
pretty
that
funny.
was
where
funny.
they
That
keep
was a good
asking that. Yeah.
This is probably the first time since high school that I think I've seen this, so it's been quite a while. I have watched a lot of Clint Eastwood movies, not as many as of late. Certainly his newer things, I would say. Post $1 Million Baby,
Yeah.
Gran Torino's all right, but kind of everything else is blah.
$1 Million Baby is actually one of his only movies that I haven't seen. It just doesn't
Oh.
look that interesting. It just looks like very standard Hollywood studio stuff. Like that just doesn't really look that interesting.
It is kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a kind of generally by the beats, but it's just done well. Like at
Yeah.
that point, well, yeah, anyway, like for Eastwood, now we're getting a sidetrack. 71, he starts his directorial debut. By the time he gets, towards these later movies, he's kind of really figured out how to just put a movie together really well.
He's a really good director. Yeah. I mean, he didn't
Yeah,
direct
yeah.
this movie, Don Siegel did, but like you can see his input into the filmmaking style. And like on IMDb now, it lists him as like an uncredited second director. And like, I wouldn't wonder what to make of
See,
that when they like after
yeah.
the fact list people as things that they weren't credited as. But like you can feel he had a lot of influence over the production of
Yeah.
the movie.
The rumor is he directed the scene with the suicide jump attempt. I guess. Like,
Okay.
but that would be it. That's the only thing that anyone seems to say that he probably directed. But this is one of multiple Don Siegel, Clint Eastwood pictures together. Eastwood has still since said Siegel is one of his favorite directors, if not his favorite director.
Mhm.
In early Clint Eastwood work, you can see the effect that Siegel had on him as a director. And Siegel is awesome at directing action. Like the action in this, the shootouts, one of the things we talked about with other action movies is trying to get a sense of like where are things happening. And there are several kind of action scenes where they're either like they're running through that park or they're on two different rooftops or there's a copter and a rooftop and a park and right, all these things, but you kind of know as you're following it, like where things are as that action happens. And there's still fast cuts within that to kind of hype up that action. Someone really loves the hi-hat. A lot of fucking, definitely of the times music here in the background that really kind of amped it up. Eastwood is good. This is absolutely one of the quintessential Eastwood archetype characters, right? Of what you would expect from him. With that like line delivery that we hear so much more in action movies after this, right? Of that, just that hard ass line delivery.
Gotta be awesome to be typecast as a badass.
I had like mixed feelings on it this time around. Like it's interesting if I look at it from the perspective of the time period, because this is right as R-rated movies are kind of a thing, right? Like the MPAA is not very old by 71. We've had a kind of few early late 60s movies that really kind of try to break some archetypes. This is one where it really is just like all action, like all violent action.
And
which
in very
next year,
70s fashion, lots of unnecessary boobs and bush.
There was kind of some curious things there. Like next, the 72, we have Godfather, right? So we kind of are going, that's where we're going to, and we're kind of in this spot between it. So I can see where audiences at the time went and saw this and were like, oh, dude, fuck yeah. Like, this is what I wanted. This is awesome. And it shows a pretty gross San Francisco. So yeah, that's another thing where I'm like, of the times, definitely like a San Francisco and New York of the 70s, right? People are kind of getting disillusioned with a lot of things. Nixon being in office, like you can definitely feel the undercurrents of this movie.
Like
today,
white flight. Yeah.
Yeah, today it does come off like pretty far right in its stance on things. Yeah. Somewhat to an uncomfortable degree. This does feel now like a poster, dorm room poster kind of movie. If you really like idolize him, I don't think he's presented as a hero per se. He's definitely an anti-hero.
Yes.
And this is a good example of a really early, popular anti-hero character. Obviously, there's multiple. I don't know, was it 4 or 5 fucking sequels to this movie?
There are 5 movies total. In the final scene, he throws his badge into the river and then goes on to make 4 more movies as a cop in that exact role.
Yeah.
He fished it
so yeah, I think the other part is, as a 70s movie, as an older movie, the pacing sometimes is off, like kind of back and forth between things. There's definitely some like unrealistic things that are just like for the action, I guess. Kind of like I feel like movies have done better since then at kind of the same thing with like actually getting into the character and a little bit more understanding, because all we know is his wife died in a drunk driving accident. And then he's been a hard ass cop, I guess, because of that. It's never really explicitly said.
I didn't know he had a wife for like so long in the movie.
Yeah, it's revealed pretty late.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's kind of like, and then even that scene is sort of a weirdly, I kind of felt like interjected to be like, hey, we have to remind you that he, struggles with this stuff and he might want to walk away from being a cop. Like just a minute of that. So that's important later. Yeah. But I will say, like, overall, though, like the action, the acting, I'm forgetting his name right now, but the guy that plays Scorpio in this, who
Andrew
we
Robinson.
also saw as Frank in Hellraiser.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He plays a really good, fucked up, creepy guy. Like,
one of the best Joker performances I've ever seen.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, his laugh in this is ridiculous.
His scream when he gets stabbed by a knife is great
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, where he's like running with the knife in his leg. So yeah, I do want to kind of get into it because I think it's interesting to look at, and I do think for that time period, like it's really interesting in that series of movies that just pushed limits of sex and violence in this time period
Mhm.
to kind of blow things up in the 70s.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think this movie is really well paced. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that. I feel like that's one of the strengths of the film is the way that it moves through from scene to scene. And I think the music is a big part of why that works. But I think one of the things that'll be interesting to break down is kind of analyze this in the context of the Western for both Clint Eastwood and for kind of American movies and where that was going. And like Dirty Harry really feels like an extension of the Man with No Name character, just ported over to San Francisco as a cop instead of as a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a time where like America is kind of moving away from westerns and into cop movies and action movies and other things like that. And this feels like one of the big movies that was a big part of that, both for Eastwood and for American movies at large. Eastwood definitely did westerns after this, but he didn't do as many as he had early in his career. Like, he made his name on Rawhide and, for 5 or 6 years on that TV show, and then as the Man with No Name, and Hang 'em High, and some big, Two Mules for Sister Sarah, a lot of great westerns in that era. And then he does Dirty Harry, and he does stuff after that. High Plains Drifter is great, Pale Rider is great, but he kind of starts moving away from the western, and it feels like he kind of takes American movies with him. And the movie still really feels like a western. He's like a lawman in a civilizing country in the West where like the government has come in and put rules around things, and he can't be like the free shooting lawman that he wants to be, that he made his name on, kind of like uh the bounty hunter that has to stop doing what he's doing because now there's actually civilization and police in the area. It feels like kind of an extension of that type of a western story into 70s San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Don Siegel, before this, mostly he did a lot of westerns, TV shows, and a lot of westerns. And then he had this movie and Beguiled with Clint Eastwood in the same
Mhm.
year. And then after that, it's like like he moves on
Yeah.
with the industry as well. So it does feel like that turning point where both of them are like, all right, let's do some different things. Right, all these multiple movies in the 70s right here that kind of come out, and then it takes it somewhere else.
It's amazing to think about the Western genre shifting into this local law enforcement role, because you have movies like, or TV shows at least, that were all cop based. Like you have Dragnet from the 50s, and you've got FBI from the 60s, and these other things that are all about I guess, a more, I would say, intellectual hunting of bad guys, where they're not so much having shootouts as they are like walking around fast talking and asking people questions about like, did you see him over here? And they're like, no, I didn't see anything. And they're trying to like deduce it. But here you just have somebody shooting a man in broad daylight on Fifth Avenue. And like walking up
And
to him,
practically everyone claps afterwards. Like,
giving
it's
him
not
like,
even,
and the dude gives him like a full monologue too before he almost kills him, like just fucking around. Harry plays with the criminals like a kid plays with their food, just as like fucking around on it, and nobody seems to care.
I love that scene. Like he's sitting down at this diner, like kind of just talking shit with the chef, and orders a hot dog, and he's like, thinks he sees a bank robbery going on, tells the chef to call in and tell the police. He's like, all right, now to sit back and wait for the cavalry to arrive, and takes a massive bite of his hot dog. And then he's like, oh shit, here's the alarms going, and just charges out into the street, hot dog stuffed in his mouth, and just starts firing into the crowd at bank robbers and firing at cars. And like, it's amazing that no civilians were killed or injured in that. Shocking. Like he flipped a car over, like all this crazy stuff. And just doesn't give a shit. He's like, oh, what do you expect me to do? I had to stop the bank robbery. It's like, maybe there are other ways that you could have done that.
Harry, the bank's insured. Like,
Yeah.
you fucking want. He's just so determined to solve the problem right then and there. He doesn't give a shit. Yeah, and Ryan, you brought up that he is very much an anti-hero. Obviously, you would hope that he's not portrayed as a hero figure. But I guess there's this spectrum of antiheroes where the movie is also in on the fact that they're an antihero and tries to make them look not that cool in what they're doing. In this instance, it feels like the movie is really rooting no matter what, as though he is the hero.
Oh yeah.
And sets up all of these boundaries and barriers that are meant to be broken. It very much is critiquing like, man, I could really just stop these guys if this goddamn judicial system wasn't in the way. An advocate for pioneer justice and that kind of shit.
So yeah, I agree that the movie presents him as the hero, but he does it in his own way, right? So he is definitely different. Everyone sees him as different. The mayor kind of snaps at him, but then is like, yeah, I mean, you were right? Kind of gives him like the benefit of it. They keep giving him these jobs, and the other cops all seem to appreciate him. But the kind of like the system fails in this movie is that this one instance he kind of gets to walk away. But if you stop and think about it, this is some like fridge logic situation in the movie where it's like you stop and you think about it and you're like, yeah, no, that's not even what would happen like in a corrupt system. There's no way that they would like let that guy go and not try to find some way to pin it on him, or in a more corrupt system, just cover it up and pin it on him, right? Like, it jumps a little bit, I think.
Yeah. If they're willing to cover up and allow for Harry to shoot men in broad daylight, that legal system is definitely willing to figure out how to make this guy go away, this killer go away for a long time.
Because they say that like they can't take the gun as admissible evidence because they collected it in this situation where Dirty Harry like broke into his place. Which I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm like, okay, but he is stabbed in the leg, and we have a different person who can corroborate that. And Dirty Harry knows he stabbed him in the leg, and he saw his face. And I'm like, there's so many other things. And I'm like, and he told them where the dead body was. That's awfully suspicious. Like, okay, he told them under duress, but he still told them, right? Like, it's.
The movie feels like a backlash toward like the kind of civil rights era politics that is actually like giving rights to defendants and like actually putting restraints around cops and what they're able to do, and like allowing them to be less terrorizing than they normally would be. And it's definitely like, it just feels like right-wing propaganda where like that scene where they bring in the judge/Berkeley professor and they make a point to say he's a Berkeley professor. Like that doesn't feel like an accident. And, he's like, well, you just I couldn't convict this guy of spitting on the sidewalk. You didn't read him his rights. You didn't get a search warrant, all this stuff. And Harry's like, what? Like, what? That's insane. How could you not prosecute this guy? It's like, you're a cop. You don't know about Miranda rights. You don't know about search warrants. You don't know about the Fourth Amendment. These things that like should be textbook stuff that cops are taught like day one of training. Yeah. And he's just shocked and that he's not allowed to just violate everyone's civil rights whenever he wants to get the guy. And it's like he makes that decision because he wants to try to save the girl's life, right? I understand why he makes that call in the moment. Like, look, I don't have time. She's running out of air. I gotta go in and solve this right now. I can't wait around. I understand that, but you have to know when you make that decision that you're not going to be able to use whatever evidence you get. You might be able to save the girl, and that's great, and that might be worth breaking the law and like not being able to prosecute this guy for the things that you find if you can save this person's life. But he's just like does not understand this at all. He's just completely incredulous to the entire thing.
Yeah, I will say though, in an interesting perspective, Miranda was like 1968, so it is reasonably like new in the public's mind and was somewhat controversial. Even now, I would say there certainly are people who, maybe on a certain side of politics, probably think that Miranda's a little bit too aggressive and that people get away with things, right? And so I think that is interesting that from the perspective of the movie, I could be like, yeah, Callahan's probably been in before those laws were in place, and he does feel the like, oh, now I'm getting like told I have to read this damn thing, and I can't go in and punch them in the middle of an interrogation. And
Why don't you just give me a copy of Moby Dick too? What do you want me to read, Chief?
The good old days where we could pretend to be hookers and have sex with them, and then we'd arrest them.
All I need to read is the number on the back of my casing, 44. I had like another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up here, which was, does it seem like this movie proves that guns don't solve problems by showing guns solving problems? Because it
How
seems
so?
like so. Anytime Harry does something, he produces his 44 Magnum immediately to take action. Like,
yeah,
he's
right. He
going-
just pulls his gun out immediately, just terrifying any bystanders.
He sees a man with a suitcase going down an alley and immediately
Yeah.
assumes that something's going down and he's going to go back there.
Turns out it's just Hot Mary and her boyfriend.
It's not Mary's
Hot
boyfriend.
Mary.
He's about to get his ass kicked by some good old boys from the Bay Area, I guess. And that's when his partner shows up. But then you have like another section where once the killer is set loose later in the movie, after the Miranda rights thing, he goes into a liquor store the killer goes into a liquor store and is like, "Hey, aren't you that guy who's been robbed 12 times?" And the dude's like, "Yep, that's me. And now I have a gun to protect myself. I send most people out of here in like a casket or whatever." And he was like, "Wow, that's cool. Can you show me the gun?" And he pulls it out. And then the dude just punches the guy in the face and takes the gun. And I was like, so the thing for self-defense didn't work the way you thought it would to defend yourself. And there just seemed to be a lot of moments where guns only escalate the situation and don't lead to anything except for cool gunfights. But when you stop and think about it, you're
But
like,
they're really cool gun
yeah,
fights.
yeah. It's like, the man who's going to jump off that building should have had a gun too, because that would have been a cool escalation, I'm sure.
I love how he solves that problem by just talking shit to the guy.
And then punching him in the face when
Yep.
he leans in. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's so good. He
that's,
saves the guy from jumping to his death by being like, "Don't jump down there. You'll splatter all over the people down there." He like makes him nauseous until he just
Oh my
finally
God,
gives
yeah.
up.
yeah, that's good therapy from Dirty Harry there. But yeah, I wasn't sure if y'all were picking up a similar thing here, which is it sets out to make a bunch of cool set pieces and cool gunfights, but ultimately guns are the main villain of this movie. I mean, the villain is also obviously fucking trying to kill people, but I think that's more to do to like leaded gas is still in the air at this point and probably driving him insane.
They do seem to like kind of paint cops versus criminals as an arms race, right? They're like, Dirty Harry has the most powerful handgun in the world.
Yeah.
Could blow your head clean off. And like when he's getting a rifle to like, try to like they're trying to bait the serial killer into this one rooftop, and he gets a rifle, and the chief is like,
458 Magnum, huh? This thing will stop an elephant.
Yeah.
Apparently you like a little edge.
Eastwood's like, "Any edge I can get, sir." And it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're gonna shoot straight through that guy and right into the like floor below and kill whoever's under the roof. Like, but it's like you have to respond to guns with bigger guns. That
Yep.
seems to be what the movie is trying to say, and it's like law enforcement philosophy.
Until you get your ribs fucking kicked in which case you should default to a knife.
Right, a
'cause that can
switchblade.
Switchblade, which apparently
it's a shame that a cop would know how to use a weapon like that.
Yeah,
despite
right.
all of the other guns that are like mass destroyers, it is the humble switchblade that is judged harshly.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I do think that's that 60s time period that had the rise of more gun crime and more of these shootouts that we see kind of reflected in these movies. And it's interesting that against Westerns and a few years prior, I would say Bonnie and Clyde, there kind of was this look back on the crime of those times and the kind of cops, robbers, that then we have a bunch of movies like this and The Godfather that then again are all police shootouts, but set in the current time period. We kind of just moved from like, hey, remember like, oh, it used to be the good old days where they had these shootouts, and it's like, oh shit, that's now. Like kind of is the sentiment of some of these movies.
Yeah, and some movies seem to be like pining for that time, and other movies seem to be criticizing that we can still do that today, and depends on the movie that you pick from the 70s and what it's kind of angling toward. And this one definitely does not seem to be critical of that.
Not at all.
Yeah, nobody even questions that guy has like a submachine gun or some shit
Yeah.
at one point, right? Yeah, it's just like,
I also love that when the city finds out that there is a rooftop killer, they put cops with guns on every rooftop as well. Just have a full surveillance state
And
of
helicopters
cops.
flying around all
Yeah.
over the city.
they put a cop on every rooftop except the rooftop across from the Catholic church when he specifically said he was going to attack a Catholic priest.
He just may figure he owes himself a padre.
Yeah.
He owes himself a padre.
I guess the helicopter was there, so okay.
Yeah,
But
that helicopter shot was really cool. Like where it shows the helicopter like zooming in on like lowering down toward the building, and the serial killer like looking up and freaking out. That was really well done, I thought.
Really tense too, just watching him get ready to kill somebody and then it be interrupted. I was wondering if he was going to get away with it or not.
Yeah.
And he's just like, fuck, I'm out of here. Just runs. I love that the cops are like way too high up and they're like, you there, just put your hands up. Definitely don't run. We're giving you too much time.
All the cops in the city are on rooftops, so when he runs down to the street, there's no one to stop him.
Talking about the camera shots that you were saying about it being a movie of the 70s, there are definitely multiple times where I sat there and I was like, oh man, this is that what can I do with the camera ? Type of movie. Because there were multiple shots where I'm like, okay, it kind of seems cool, but today I can look at it and be like, all right, come on. But definitely like the zoom out from the football field, the whole thing with the football field is pretty cool. That's a good location.
When they turn the lights on and it's dark and they flip the lights on and the camera is just on Dirty Harry and his 44 pointed at the screen, that shot's super cool.
Yeah. Really awesome stuff there. But there's one scene where he's like walking to the mayor's office and the camera like goes to the ground and then goes upside down kind of as he's like walking by. And you can tell because of the time period that it's just a guy laying there, like leaning back with the camera.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, well,
There's not
you
really reason for that, but yeah.
Yeah, we were just like, what can we do? All right, let's do this. Cool, that looked cool, and then move on.
I liked the Dirty Harry cam that we got occasionally where it would go first person, like when he's at the cross in the park.
Yeah.
Like looking up and he just
all
has
the
to
way
look
up
up
the cross.
to the top of the cross and the camera does the exact same angle. I was like, well, this is neat. We get a second to see what Harry sees before he gets the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah.
Pretty rad.
It's interesting too because there's a Jesus Saves sign in the rooftop shooting that you talked about earlier. And then when the serial killer is leading him around the city from phone booth to phone booth and he ends up at this massive cross in the middle of this park and then, ends up getting the shit beat out of him and the serial killer gets away. It's like it feels like there's imagery here that like religion can't save you, like there's the scary evil in society and Jesus ain't doing shit about it. And, we got to have big men with big guns come in and save the day.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they were firing that like high caliber rifle right under the Jesus Save sign says it all. I think at the point that they get to the cross, that's just Dirty Harry is going to die for our sins.
Could be.
By any way.
Making him a martyr, yeah.
They talk about how they justify a lot of Dirty Harry's his demeanor by what did they try? They like bring him into the office and his new partner when he meets his new partner, which is another Chico, which is another classic trope of you getting a partner now. A partner?
I don't need a partner.
Yeah. I don't need a partner. I've hospitalized too many partners in the past. Well, not me personally, but and then him just kind of being like Chico trying to figure out everything about Harry and like, hey, I would just want to be your partner. You need to get to know me. But like one of the first things he gets to know is that Harry's just a racist, like a rampant racist. And they're like, oh, he hates all kinds. And like, I love the juxtaposition of the mayor who refuses to say certain words. He doesn't say the N-word, which is what the killer leaves in his note. But then like there are cops who just outright will say it and don't even care. And it feels really dirty. Despite Dirty Harry being the only dirty one in the movie, a lot of other cops are really comfortable just outing him as a racist on the force.
Yeah, and it seems like they tried to use that scene to make it look like Harry just hates everybody. And like I think that he even says whites in that long list of races. But like when you say every other race and you say all of these terrible slurs for them, it just comes across that Harry and probably that cop, definitely that cop, is racist.
Yeah. That's not one of those, like, you're not making that same argument you think you're making when you're like, oh, well, Dave Chappelle criticizes everyone. Whatever the fuck. It's like, he's not a stand-up comedian. Harry's type 5 is the fucking Chambers. That's like all that he does.
Did he do a tight 6 or only 5?
I'm too deep into this bit to remember at this point. I want to talk about the way the story actually flows, though, because I noticed there is kind of a formula to how it's set up, which is there's a bit of a thriller aspect where they set up the killer at the beginning. They have a whole mysterious rooftop sequence. He shoots a woman. apparently the caliber of rifle he shoots a woman with doesn't go right through her, just goes into her shoulder, and then she dies from breathing a lot. She drowns.
Yeah.
Which I'm willing to forgive. It's an impressive shot. Then
they might have clipped her heart, maybe.
It could have been,
it was
yeah,
at
yeah.
a downward angle. You never know.
I can talk myself into that. But then like from there, it really is like, hey, here's Harry. Get to know him, and by get to know him, I mean he's got a partner. He's pissed off about. All of his other partners are hospitalized. They're gonna run the night for a little bit and see what's going on. It felt almost like a small anthology series in that first act where they're cruising around. It's kind of like Taxi Driver whenever De Niro picks up somebody new. You're like, oh, here's like a little story from San Francisco. And Harry's like, oh, this guy ran down the alley. I'm going to go chase him and get beat up for looking like a pervert. And then there's a jumper. I'm going to go up there and punch him in the face and help him with his problems. And
each time you get a different reason for why he's called Dirty Harry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it slowly builds that out. And then it really kicks in later where it's like, oh yeah, that killer's still out there. So Harry's going to focus on that now. And that's when it felt like the movie really locked in. So I'm wondering, Ryan, is that like what you were talking about with pacing issues? That like it kind of...
Yeah. I feel like the end of the movie takes off for sure. There's definitely a point where the tension is high, especially when, we know Scorpio's out there again and Dirty Harry's just following him everywhere. Like for the rest of that on, right? I think that's really good. But yeah, early we kind of go back and forth from the initial, like, he shoots him to these like there's a little arguments about like, oh, do we pay him? Do we not pay him? There's a little bit of that driving around. They see him on the rooftop. There's the thing with the guy maybe committing suicide, which is like a cool character piece for how shitty Dirty Harry is, but kind of also has nothing to do with anything else that's going on.
Yeah,
and we get multiple of like, yeah, at one point I watched this with Darla and she's like, does he work the day shift or the night shift? Because we go from like scene to scene of like, yeah, daytime, nighttime, a couple times in a row here at the beginning, and he's just working all of those shifts. I mean, I guess the same thing, like the bank thing, like those are, I guess, to show him as a character. But it's interesting that they immediately show us like the killing, and then they show us who the guy is, so we don't have any like mystery or anything in this movie. It's like a Columbo episode. We see the person at the beginning.
It's
committing a crime.
Harry solve the mystery.
Chase it down.
Yeah,
right.
Figuring that out, yeah.
But then we kind of like take an aside for a while before we get back to that. I think that was kind of where it dips a little bit. And then similarly, I kind of think there's a little bit of a break when we know he's getting away with it, so to speak, where he goes and sees his partner at the rooftop hospital. Whatever the fuck that hospital
Which there is a rooftop killer on the loose, and there's a hospital with a rooftop patio that they just like bring their patients out for like recess or something. And, like, reel them out of their beds. If I'm ever hospitalized, I want to go to that hospital so I get my like rooftop, 30 minutes a day or whatever.
Oh yeah, it seems pretty solid.
There's a little bit of a slowdown there to kind of try to give the, like, here's what the judge says. He goes and talks to his partner and talks about leaving. And it's kind of this break to try to give us some character stuff in a movie that doesn't need it. And honestly is just kind of putting it in because it's supposed to. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm like, the pacing kind of tries to give these character moments where in the beginning of the movie, it gives us character moments that have nothing to do with anything and are just to show how violent he is. And then later in the movie, they're like, oh, we need some character moments that aren't him just shooting people. So here's some other stuff that it's like, okay, maybe you could have mixed it a little bit better and actually given us a little, like in another movie later, if this is a more modern version of this, we would have had him going to his apartment by himself and he's lonely and he opens his fridge and all that's in his fridge is a thing of mustard in the center of the fridge, fucking nothing else. Right. And then that would have given us like what we needed to know about this guy.
They actually do,
but we don't really have
the
that.
Sequels. They like have him like eating a TV dinner alone in his 1-bedroom apartment and like having some sort of romantic fling with the woman across the hall. Like, they kind of do stuff like that later in the series, but
yeah.
You called it, Ryan. You called it. Oh man. Yeah, I would have much preferred to see, because everybody shouts his backstory at you. Like in any one scene, somebody's ready to be like, oh, that's Dirty Harry. He did this shit. I don't want anything like this anymore, Dirty Harry. Like they just list up anything. Like and don't you burn it down like you did that orphanage, Harry. God damn it. We can't afford any of these things anymore. And like, I would have much preferred people like Chico or even Chico's wife. It would have been funny if Chico's wife took on the role of asking him more questions about himself, and that he just got more and more annoyed as the movie went on. And it's like, I'm so tired of answering goddamn questions from everyone.
I'm just dirty. That's it.
Putting a stop to all of this. Running for mayor of Carmel.
I do think it's like the reason there is no character development is because it's so heavily influenced by the Man with No Name trilogy, right? And they're clearly pulling that over and trying to have this mysterious character who's just like imposing and mad and can kind of like have his way with the city and do what he wants. And it feels like they're trying to pull that into, a modern cop movie. And, maybe they lean too hard into that, but I think it works pretty well. Like, there's definitely, points where they try to tell, insert backstory that feel a little bit, kind of tacked on, but I didn't really mind, honestly. I think maybe it's just because I like that character from The Man with No Name so much. I liked seeing him in this setting. But it feels like that's what they're trying to do, right?
I think so, but like at the end of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he just walks off, right? Or Fistful of Dollars. He just leaves the town and he walks off with his money. And it's like he comes in as this force and leaves as a force. And there is no reasoning for him any more than the violence in the town has a reason, right? Like in those movies as well. At least here with like Scorpio, I do appreciate they don't spend any time being like, because I hate this a lot of times, trying to give him a backstory of how when he was a kid, yada, yada, yada. Like they don't fucking care about his backstory at all, right? He's just a violent force. I think then if it was the same thing where Callahan is just this also violent force and we don't need to know why, and there isn't this like, I'm done with the police force. It's like he doesn't fucking care.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might work better if he was like a bounty hunter or something. Like I feel like in Westerns, because of the transient nature of these characters, like you just come into this small town and you don't have to tell anybody why the fuck you're there. You can do whatever you want and leave. And like he's a
and you're
cop
not the
on
sheriff.
The
you're just a guy
in San Francisco. Like he lives there. He has a history there. And so I think there's some, that's a bit of a handicap where you have to kind of give a little bit more to who that character is. Like they can't just ride in as a foreign force and wreak havoc and leave, right? They have to keep living there.
Yeah, but that's the difference. A John Wayne movie, he's a sheriff, or he's he's supposed to be that kind of figure that's holding some kind of order. A Clint Eastwood movie, he's a criminal maybe already, or he's just a force that comes in, or a guy that just wants to get rich. And then it's like, okay, now we'll put him in a cop movie and do the same thing, sort of, except he's a cop, so not exactly. Yeah, it's like
we'll have him rail against the rules that the cops have instead. And
right.
There's also that aspect of. I want to talk about San Francisco as a character in this movie because they use a lot of San Francisco.
How insightful of you, John.
I love it. It was almost like a character, What can I say? It plays such a big role in his chase for Scorpio. I don't know any of the places they shoot for this. I was thinking of Vertigo when I watched it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of like in that mental map of where you're going in San Francisco. Here they have...
There's one shot on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yep.
But
there's a bridge, They
have the bridge. They list a number of stops that he has to go to when he's trying to be the bag man. That's the first time, right? With the yellow bag.
Mm-hmm.
That scene was fucking great.
Oh,
Just him having to keep up and run. And like Harry's in good shape. I gotta say, for somebody I assumed like drank liquor nonstop and brandishes his pistol everywhere.
He's still making movies in his 90s, man. He was like 40 when this came out. He's he's pretty healthy guy.
Pretty damn winded as he was going, but you could tell he's putting in the work. And I thought he would run into way more punks during that sequence.
Well, he did run into that random group of punks in that tunnel.
Yeah, like in a tunnel. And that was the thing, was like he runs into people in San Francisco who I guess are representative of San Francisco. Like he sees a couple that are necking in the park, and then he runs into what's his name, Alan or something.
He runs into a few gays that he's very annoyed that he has to deal with.
The fucking guy that he's like I'm Callahan. And it's just like, I'm Alan, man. Like, he's just like, get the fuck out of here. Like, yeah, just that whole sequence. I couldn't stop thinking, like, they use all of these really cool rooftop sequences, all these locations that really seem like they didn't build too much. I assume like the interiors, the police station and everything, obviously sets just to make the camera movement easier. I don't know if that's true, but it makes sense to me. But then outdoorsy stuff, that's all like actual San Francisco as far as I can tell. And I was just really impressed that they use, you know, the entire body of the city to kind of tell this story. Whereas like subsequent movies, not subsequent Dirty Harry movies, but other movies that are influenced by this, you can definitely tell that they're like, we need to place this in a gritty place. Let's call it Chicago, and we'll build like a back alley set and some other stuff, and
we'll shoot some exteriors on some B-roll footage and splice it in.
Exactly. Yeah, but here I felt like they used everything. They didn't even do like stock B-roll or anything.
No,
I think they shot it for real. The only external scene that is not in San Francisco is the shootout at the bank. And I think that's only out of the ridiculousness of the stunts, like flipping the car and all that stuff.
They need a controlled environment to do that.
Yeah. Definitely. So that one's just like a backlot, Warner backlot kind of deal, or Universal backlot or something shot. But this is a Warner Brothers movie, right? Yeah, so it's a Warner backlot shot. But there's like there are a lot of the Bank of America building, which was, it's funny from the top of that building, like looking at that skyline and it being such a damn tall building, where now I'm like, I think it's in the top 5 in San Francisco, but you can't really fucking see it anymore. And then the cross in the park, Mount Davidson Park, and the stadium, which is now some other, it's like a fucking high school stadium or whatever, but the old football stadium is a key place as well, right? And we see the bridge. We see him go across the bridge and like look to Alcatraz. Like there's just a ton of stuff that we see. And I was gonna one call out, when we're seeing the seedy side of town, when they're driving by, you see that set of like topless bars. There's like 4 or 5 in a row. Those were like the first topless bars in the United States. Like that. Oh, it was in San Francisco, and that particular area was that for a while. It's completely changed now. San Francisco is gentrified, but at the time, that was, you know, in the 70s, that's exactly what that was the X movies and the topless bars all right there on one strip.
They just assume like, oh, there's a criminal on the loose. Let's go to the titty bars. That's where.
Yeah, we'll drive by and look
in the seediest places. Yeah. They're not going to be in the porno theater. That's where all the couples go to watch the couple movies.
I want to talk about the kind of the, you know, final sequence of the movie where, you know, so Scorpio hijacks a school bus and calls the mayor and it's like, I have, you know, like 15 kids and I'm going to kill them and you need to like give me $200,000 in a jet. And, you know, that scene is so terrifying. Like he is, you know, scaring the shit out of these kids and trying to get them to sing row, row, row your boat to like cheer them up. And they're just crying and like terrified for their lives. And he's like mad at them and trying to get them to sing. And it's just, I thought that was really well done. And
he slaps the shit out of that one. That was fucked up.
Just kind of a tonal shift a little bit in the movie where like it always felt like real, and you know, as the investigation is really interesting, but then you get all, oh shit, now we got a busload of kids involved, and it does it in a way that feels really terrifying, and it doesn't feel like, a lot of times I feel like stuff like that in movies can just feel kind of cheesy and dumb, and I thought it was really well executed.
Well, you think about like can't help but think about Speed because there's a bus involved.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of like sequences. I think that it also speaks to the escalation of the movie. Like it establishes that this guy is going to just get more and more unhinged as the film goes on, because he starts by sniping people at random from the rooftop. He has some kind of arbitrary method to picking what, and it's his prejudice, I guess. And then after that, he kidnaps a girl and like rips her tooth out with fucking pliers and buries her alive.
And drops her in the sewer.
Yeah. And then from there, you're like, all right, well, this dude doesn't just kill like adults. He will do whatever the fuck to whoever the fuck. And the moment that he steps on that bus, And just as like bus inspector, you're like, oh god damn it.
Oh boy.
He has no good alibi or cover to be on this bus. He's just gonna hijack it, take these kids wherever the fuck, and like the kids who got off, I feel bad because they're gonna find out about their friends later that like traumatic shit happened. But just watching that sequence go down and wondering, I also thought that he would immediately be like, all right, kids, this is a fucking stick up. Like, you shut your fucking mouths. But the fact that he kept singing with them until one of them was like, I want to go home. Why are we going so far somewhere? Like, it was weird that he tried to keep up the illusion of taking them to an ice cream store for so long. But he did.
What, you don't want fucking ice cream?
It's like, oh my God. Yeah, the moment that he flips that switch where, he smacks the kid, that's when he just starts screaming at everybody to keep singing and that it's going to be okay. Yeah, I had no idea what, but the entire time that he was doing that, I thought, again, Ryan, I don't know if you had the same logical conclusion. It's just like, just slam on your brakes, bus driver. Like, the dude's not holding on
when
to
he's standing
anything.
up. Yeah.
Like, he's just fucking, but she's terrified that she'll get killed too. And it's like,
I mean, she's not going to win.
Or
that
a kid
fight,
gets hurt.
even if he flies into the,
it's true. But yeah, I was just kind of
I
like,
will say kids, like knowing kids, especially kids that age, within like a minute, they would have been like, where the fuck are we going? Why are we going? Like immediately just start asking you. It was too long that they were singing before they were like, wait a minute, this isn't adding up. We're crossing the...
They sing row, row, row your boat like 98 times.
Like, I don't remember us crossing the Golden Gate Bridge to get home.
Yeah.
Darla did complain at that point that she was like, he's changed his MO too many times. This isn't believable. I was like, yeah,
he's the Joker. He doesn't need a reason to do what he does. You know.
I think if we were presenting this as like, yeah, he's actually like has a mental issue and is a disturbed person, he would stick to his MO. But I do see it as this like the Joker. He's just a force of violence with no care.
This is Dark Knight. Yeah. To Dixon's point.
Yeah, it is the best Batman movie. Yeah, so I guess before the bus scene, we didn't talk about where Scorpio pays some random dude to just beat the shit out of him, gives him $200, and the guy's like, "You really want the full $200?" And he's like, "Yeah, give me the whole fucking thing." And gets the shit beat out of him, and then blames Callahan for beating him up, which just feels like right-wing cultural backlash to people blaming the cops for beating them up. It's like, no, the cops beat them up. Like, that's what happened. Like, but in this case, the one time in the world where somebody got beat up by somebody else and blamed it on the cops. Not the one time.
Well, he had gotten beat up.
Kind of absurd. Yeah.
He had gotten beat up by him.
He had been beat up by Harry before. Yeah. So it was,
it kind of deflates the argument a little bit, doesn't it? Where it's just like, well, he tries to like retcon it too, doesn't he? He's like, yeah, he beat me up and the police department framed me for everything before. And I'm like, no, I mean, they found that girl. Like, they know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Also, is there like an underground like network of just random people you can pay to beat the shit out of you in San Francisco in 1971? Is that like a sex thing, or like what's the deal with that?
It's the premium membership to Fight Club.
That really took me out of it for a bit because at first I was like, oh, is he like into getting beat up? Is that what's going on? Like we're on a side tangent here. And then I was trying to figure out like the whole $200. What does $50 get you? Like I started getting to like the negotiation of like, he's like, oh, I want to beat you up, and he gives him a price, and he's like, he's like, oh, I can beat you up for $100. What can I get for $200?
Yeah,
I can really beat you up.
Can make
like
you
I was trying to figure out that conversation.
So I was really confused by that scene. I won't lie. I did not pick up on what was happening until long after he had been passed out. Which I was like, initially when he walked in and he was like, here's $200, like handle it. I was like, oh, he's going to an underground doctor. And then the guy puts on the gloves and I'm like, oh, he's going to do like some kind of facial reconstruction shittiness thing where he cuts his face a bunch.
That's about basically what happened.
Yeah. And then he like punches the shit out of him. And I was like, oh, this guy's a shitty doctor. And then like when he knocks him over and he's like, do you want the rest of it? And he's like, yeah. And he kicks him once. I was like, that's the rest of it? What the fuck? And then he kicks him once more and he's like, that one's for free. And I was like, wait, no, that doesn't add up. I don't understand. Why did you stop right before you're just going to kick him once?
When I first saw it, I thought that they were doing that to like explain why he was fucked up. Like, oh, he's some weird piece of shit that likes getting beat up, and like that's explaining his character. Like, thankfully, that's not what they were doing. But,
so then he's been beat up severely. He still limps from being stabbed in the leg. After the attack on Callahan, Callahan broke 2 ribs and something else they said, right?
Yep.
And they have a chase scene, like multiple chase scenes over a significant distance. And I've broken a rib, and I turned to Darla. There were like 2 broken ribs. I was like, I couldn't get out of bed with one. I was like, there's no way he's fucking climbing fences and chasing this guy and all this shit.
This is Clint
There's
Eastwood
no
we're
way.
talking about here.
It's true, but it was twice as bad as what I had.
Yeah, it's fine. He drank alcohol. The solution to and cause of a lot of problems, just like the guns.
You have to remember, we are all just absolute pussies compared to Clint Eastwood, so you can't compare your personal experience to what he goes through.
He is a crack shot with a gun that has a ridiculous recoil.
It has a very long barrel, though.
That's true.
Speaking of that final chase sequence, when the school bus comes like over the hill and you see Harry on the bridge in the distance, that's just so cool. Just such a badass scene, and Harry's just standing there like resolute in his sunglasses staring at the bus, and Scorpio's like, no freaking out.
Yeah, that was awesome.
There's this kind of cool contrasted imagery where I think about like bank robbers, like the train robbers of like the Old West, and how they would stand on bridges to like hop on the train. It's like the same thing, but in reverse, where he's the hero hopping on to pull a heist on this like runaway bus. It's kind of rad. And I love the stunt too of him like holding on and just like the bus wrecking into so many things, hitting like a Volkswagen.
Yeah, and they got a camera up there on the roof of the bus to show all this is going on. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that was good action. Yeah.
Why did Scorpio run away whenever he crashed the bus? Shouldn't he have? I mean, he ran away to take a child hostage elsewhere. He had perfectly good child hostages on that bus.
That's a good point.
He didn't grab that other kid until he saw him later.
Yeah,
right.
He just stops the bus and he gets out and runs for it.
Yeah, where they make the rocks for San Francisco.
I love the ending chase sequence and how it calls back to the earlier scene, bank robbery scene at the beginning of the film when he's chasing him all through this factory and firing shots, and you're not sure how many shots he's fired, and the way they shoot it, you're not really sure sometimes if like the sound of a bullet is coming from his gun or from Scorpio's gun. And, some of them you can obviously tell it's him, but others you can't. And by the end, you're like, was it 5? Was it 6? Was it 7? I'm not really sure exactly. And then, the big speech at the end that mirrors the one at the beginning of the bit I did at the start of the podcast where, he's like, I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? And goes through that whole thing. And, in the opening scene, the guy like gives up, and then it turns out Harry's out of bullets and shoots, nothing at him. And in this case, Scorpio just like lets out this horrifying shriek and lunges for his gun, and Harry just blows him away and into the river.
Yeah, which the shot he pulled right before that was he did not give a fuck that Scorpio had a kid as a hostage. He just shot Scorpio straight up.
Oh, dude.
He didn't even aim. Like, he just sort of pulled the gun out and was like, I gotcha.
Yeah, he was like faking like he was going to drop the gun and then just whipped it up super fast. And, he's just a crack shot. He can just shoot it right barely over the kid's head into Scorpio's shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why he didn't shoot him in the face. But,
if he's such a crack shot, what's going on?
That's some Western movie shit right there, right? Yeah. To like shoot the guy that's got the hostage. Yeah. Do you think that he said that phrase before the first scene we see it?
Oh yeah.
Like how many is this like a Jules Winfield situation where he thinks it's a badass thing to say every single time?
That's right before he wastes punks.
Before he arrests every single person. It's like, you haven't even fired your gun. Like you just approached me for like jaywalking.
I didn't even know you had a gun. Yeah. He probably does though, right? He probably takes it out even for like the littlest of situations.
When he starts following a guy down an alley that has a brown suitcase, he pulls his gun out, like just
he's got the taillights out and then he pulls the gun out.
His gun's name is Miranda Rights.
Sir, you were going 60 in a 55. He's got his gun tapping the window with his gun.
You know how fast the 44 Magnum goes in a 55? I also love about that last chase sequence that they use so much of that like refinery. Mm-hmm. It's not just because if it was just Harry and Scorpio running around and trying to shoot each other for too long, it'd feel like a laser tag match. Just like, I'm hiding behind this wall and over here. But the camera moves to so many different unique spots where they're trying to find new vantage points to see each other. Or that one sequence where Harry is like riding on the fucking rock belt, the
Oh.
conveyor
Yeah.
belt, which is pretty sick.
Yeah, the factory is in operation while they're running through and trying to kill each other. It's a really cool scene.
I love the guy that they run by. He's just like, "What are you doing here?" It's like muffled. He's trying to talk through his mask. Can't see shit. It's great. But yeah, like that is kind of that freshness you look for in any kind of chase sequence. I think so many movies after that failed because they didn't have enough budget to do those kind of shots or to fit the camera in there. And so what you end up with is, how many cuts can we make to show you that the characters are just running down blocks of streets and like trying to keep up with them that way? But here they use so much geometry within the actual factory itself that you're like, oh shit, how is Harry going to see this guy? Or does he know that he's like able to see him through this crack over here? And like, it adds to the tension of it.
But even the like shootout from the roof,
Mhm.
like the two roofs over to each other, using the Jesus Lives sign above it is pretty cool, right? And then that getting shot out, and then we have that over over these two rooftops, and then kind of a rush down the stairs. That's honestly could be done pretty cheap, and it was good, right? It was well
Mhm.
shot.
Yeah.
Because you can just use some like simple, like if you want to be really lazy, you can just like throw rocks at the neon sign or something
Until
and
it
make it
falls.
look like it was bullets. Yeah. I think that even the like simple action scenes in this movie are done well with good tension.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
We
So, yeah.
We didn't talk about how during that scene or right before the Jesus save scene, Harry creeps on a naked woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just straight up, you owe it to yourself, Harry, to live a little.
Yeah.
He's so confused.
Twice.
Like it's stark naked, opens the door to like a couple, like a man and woman as guests, and invites them into the apartment. And he's
Yep.
just, the look on his face is like, what the fuck is this fucked up shit going on here? Like,
Yeah, that, and then after he realizes that the guy with the suitcase is not his
Oh yeah.
perp, and then he just hangs out to watch. Was it Hot Mary?
Hot
Mary.
Mary.
Yeah, he just hangs around to
there.
watch Hot
Yeah.
Mary for a while. Yeah,
That's why they call him Dirty Harry. There you go.
yeah. I think that's probably true, seeing as we
Yeah.
twice saw him just like not pay attention to his job at all.
Oh man, if you find out
Because
that
some
Dirty Harry
boobs were there.
has a sexual harassment record at HR and the police department, just like,
He acts like this is a rare thing. He's like, oh, Harry, you owe it to yourself. And, let loose a little bit. This is something that happens like 3 times a day on
Yeah.
the job. He's just constantly getting distracted by boobs.
just put that in any sequence here. He's going up to see the guy who's going to jump, and he's like, I got a pair of binoculars. You want to see something cool?
Yeah. Yeah, he stops one floor down.
He's
like, hang on a second.
Animal House.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing that I wanted to comment on was, of course, the Simpsons parody of McGarnacle,
Yes.
which is great. When they have the McGarnacle as the Dirty Harry character who's just like breaking all the rules in the cop station, and the police chief always like, God damn it, McGarnacle, you've done it again, you son of a bitch.
Gotta do it for me, Billy. You gotta do it for McGarnagle.
Okay. For you, McGarnagle.
Well, McGonagall, Billy is dead. They slit his throat from ear to ear.
Hey, I'm trying to eat lunch here.
Yeah, between that and like the Naked Gun series, which I believe has its own bits, like they do the I don't want an incident like what happened last time or whatever in this
Oh, yeah.
avenue.
Oh, Drebin, I don't want any more trouble like you had last year on the South Side. Understand? That's my policy.
Yes, well, when I see 5 weirdos dressed in togas stabbing a guy in the middle of the park in full view of 100 people, I shoot the bastards. That's my policy.
That was a Shakespeare in the Park production of Julius Caesar, you moron.
I always like the what I think of as the last action hero. It's because questionable as that movie is, but the guy at the beginning like dies and is like, one day from retirement, and then he kills over and dies. And then his police chief in that movie is absolutely the caricature of the police chief, who's like, you're too loose, you're too crazy.
Yeah. And then we see like, I guess from here, once the movie's over, this is where like everything took off for Dirty Harry being such a pop culture influence to the point where now it's like parodied, not just in like The Simpsons, and obviously like Naked Gun has its own cop parody stuff, but you even see it come into like different comedy forms with like the other guys. where they just deconstruct that myth of like badasses who are immortal. Who
Love
can
that
like
movie.
break 2 ribs and keep running and that kind of shit. But
having sex with all the women that we don't want to, but we do it anyway.
But yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of a call to any listeners out there to submit your favorite parodies of Dirty Harry. I'm curious how many are out there beyond the ones we've listed. I'm sure there's tons.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For it.
Any other thoughts on the movie?
I feel like we picked it
I think
clean.
we covered what I had.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. John, would you recommend this movie?
I would recommend this movie. I would recommend it, but I would also have to. I feel like now when I recommend it, I have to preface it to my friends and be like, "Look, I don't endorse what this movie is about, but it's pretty fucking cool." But which is how I pitched The Punisher 2004. So, you know.
Yeah, you're used to this kind of thing,
yeah.
John. Yeah.
It's totally fine.
You have to say that qualification about the majority of movies that you recommend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You're right. It is just one more drop in the bucket. I promise I'm okay, everyone.
That's why I knew you would like this movie when I picked it. It was like, John's going to be completely on board with this.
Oh, yeah. I loves me some
high
copaganda
quality
exploitation.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I said I was mixed on it, but I'm not gonna be like John and sit on the fence. Like I will recommend it. I do think it is a classic movie. It's culturally important, right? The like touchstone of it in pop culture. And I do think as a movie of the early 70s, of the time, like representing kind of what was going on in people's minds, and seeing some of the early change in movies to these more clearly adult movies, like very right out adult movies, that it fits there. Darla was a nope on this. She said it was a pass. She was like it because I think from her standpoint, like, one, she likes characters that you can identify with or like, and there really isn't anyone necessarily likable in this.
Chico, you could say, but
yeah,
Chico
maybe,
becomes a teacher.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he gives up and just decides to be a teacher.
He believes in children, the second most precious natural resource behind oil and gas.
And banks.
And banks. Yeah, sorry, the third most precious natural resource behind those things.
Darla at one point was like, okay, Chico's either going to get shot and die or save Dirty Harry. And when he comes running up on Dirty Harry at the cross and he shoots at the guy and misses, and then the guy shoots him, I was like, why not both?
Yeah.
Like, he managed to survive though, but it was close. It was close to both.
But he killed his
I think
career.
she just she thought it was a little too ridiculous, which it is ridiculous, but it's kind of just like, you have to give all that up.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
you're wanting to see like an action movie. And there are so many like popcorn fluff action movies now that wasn't really the case.
Oh yeah,
then.
this is so much better than the majority of modern action movies.
Yeah, and I think
John Wick
that this
4
one
aside.
was really trying. Yeah, none of the Fast and Furious movies, and not John Wick.
Cool. Yeah, I would obviously recommend this movie. Same caveat around the politics of this film that are pretty atrocious. But I think the movie is just so good. It's just so well executed. And if you like cop movies, if you like action movies, you will definitely like it. But even if you don't, and you just like good movies with good scripts that are well executed, shot well, good score, that's just so rare anymore in modern movies. I think it's definitely worth watching. So
it's rare in modern popular movies.
Yes, in modern popular. That's what I mean. My like Warner Brothers movies, right?
Yeah.
Well, that brings this episode to a close. I have been your host, Michael Dixon. With me, as always, John Garcia.
Thanks, Dixon, for running this. Thanks for picking Dirty Harry. That was great. And let's all remember who the real villain was back then. Leaded gasoline. Leaded gasoline caused so much fucking delirium and insanity.
Are you saying that leaded gasoline was the cause of the modern right-wing movement? Like the
yes,
Goldwater
that's exactly
era?
what. It took 20 years for us to stop letting the gasoline after we discovered it was bad. It led to Reaganism. We all know that. So, there you go.
Interesting take. And Ryan King.
We hope you got every penny of your $200 worth.